Wow. Good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And man, I am excited. I've had some unbelievable guests on the show, as many of you know, and I really appreciate. I already see people sharing this out, so thank you in advance for that. Today I have a legend on the show. I have Mr. Ben Gay III joining us, and I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. Honor to be here. I've heard a lot about you, and it's an honor. And I've watched some of your shows. It's an honor to be with you.
I know that you've written some books, and I'm a very transparent person, so I have not read any of your books yet. So
shame on you.
I know, right? But that's going to change. That's going to change. So, because I believe at 50 years old, I still have so much to learn, and I can learn from just about anybody. So, as I told you, this show, I created this to help people get unstuck. I believe that we all hit those walls in life, and it happens to go with my name very well. But we hit those walls in life, and we, a lot of people stay there. They stay stuck, and they don't know how to get unstuck. And I know a man like you, you've probably hit a wall or two in your life.
A few.
Have you? Yeah. And I'm sure you figured out how to plow through them or climb over them or get under them or whatever. And so I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So let's start with telling everybody where you were born and raised.
Born in Massachusetts. I was born a Yankee, but thankfully, through the grace of God, I was raised a Southerner. Atlanta is if you and I met on an airplane, although I haven't lived there in well over 40 years, and said, "Where are you from?" I'd say Atlanta. We'd have to talk for a while before I mentioned California.
Yeah.
So Atlanta is my emotional home. I'm a Southerner, all the good things that come with that, hospitality, good food, friendship, etc. And, that's where I got the start in my sales career.
Was in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. At age 14, my father suggested that I wanted a self-winding watch. You're probably not old enough to remember what they are, but as you moved your wrist, a little weight in there, wound the watch.
It's called a Rolex, isn't it?
Well, I guess a Rolex does the same thing. Yeah, I have a friend who has 4 or 5 on his dresser, and they're always moving around and so on. But anyway, that's what I wanted for my birthday or something. My father said, "I can't get it for you." And I said, "Why?" He did well. And he said it would always be running down, and implying that I just sat and watched television or something and didn't do anything. So he lent me the family lawnmower and sent me out in the hot Atlanta summer to mow lawns. I mowed 1 or 2, came home, put the lawnmower back in the garage, and said, "I don't like that."
Wow.
And he said, "Well, it's not an option. You're going to be in the lawn mowing business till you figure out something better. But let me give you a couple of secrets." And the secret was, be the one who sells the jobs. Don't set a price on it. Tell them to pay you what they think it's worth. I said, "Can I trust them to do that?" He said, "They'll pay you 2 or 3 times as much as they would pay your set price if you do a good job. And then hire your friends to mow the lawn and give them half of the money." So in the growing season, starting at age 14 till almost 17, I had 20, 25 kids working for me.
Oh, my gosh.
My friends, and was doing rather well. And then I won the Krispy Kreme donut. Somewhere along in there, I won the Krispy Kreme donut sales contest, a fundraiser at school, and won a bicycle. And I was sort of hooked. I knew, but Dad was a salesman. Everybody in our family grown were salespeople. We belonged to East Lake Country Club. Most of the successful people there had either were salespeople or were salespeople before they started Home Depot and Coca-Cola and so on. So
yeah. I've actually been to the Coca-Cola Museum down there. It's an experience. Isn't that an experience?
Yeah,
and underground Atlanta and all. It's like
underground Atlanta. We used to own. It was the back of our warehouse at 54 Produce Row.
Oh my gosh!
we're out here. Well, not with nightclubs and all. It was just the loading dock of my
Yeah.
father's big warehouse. So I'm out here in California. I'm reading about underground Atlanta. Dad, the next time I'm back, we got to take Mother down there. And I don't know if you've been to it or not. And in so many words, he said, "You idiot." That's where you played every Saturday while I was holding sales meetings. It's the back of our warehouse.
Oh my
It,
gosh.
it wasn't hidden. It was, it wasn't discovered. It was a working dock on the back of a warehouse. So I knew it. I knew underground Atlanta before it was underground Atlanta.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. That's unbelievable. Why don't you? I found it to be a pretty interesting story because, again, I don't think anything happens by chance or accident. You told me before we went live, you told me a quick story about why you ended up in Atlanta. And I think it's an interesting enough story to share that. How did you go from I'm born in Massachusetts and all of a sudden we're living in Atlanta?
Well, we bounced through California briefly. My dad helped open up Apple Valley, California, and as I'd mentioned to you, sold Roy Rogers, the great cowboy star, his big ranch, and Pearl Bailey and her husband, their big ranch, and so on. But my mother didn't like the high desert at all. I know you don't like Las Vegas for similar reasons.
Yeah.
And so she developed nosebleeds. I really believe that while Dad was at work, she punched herself in the face until she bled enough
She
to get out of
wanted
there.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we were on the way to Florida to buy a real estate company. I was 6.5 years old. Stopped in Atlanta for one night to see his uncle, my great uncle, who was a food broker. And the next morning we got up to leave. Either my mother or I had the mumps that extended us for 10 days. The next day when we went to leave, on the 11th day, the other one, mother or me, had the mumps. That stretched it out to 20 days. And in those 20 days, my Uncle Arnold talked Dad into buying the food brokerage business. So we stopped literally in Atlanta for one night 70 years ago.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Still members of the Gay family there as a result of mumps.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we wound up with underground Atlanta. What a small world. No one's mentioned that to me in years.
The only reason it stands out underground Atlanta is really, really, really cool.
Yep.
But I was almost mugged by a guy that was about 6'8", wearing a long black coat, like leather, whatever you call those dusters. And he walks up to me and he opens it up, and on one side he's got all these knives. I'm like, and he's like, they're for sale. And I'm like, okay. And then he opens up the other side and it's all these watches. I'm like, dude, I'm good, man. He's like, what? And he kind of got closer to me. I'm like, I don't want anything, but thanks, dude. It was weird. And I'll never forget that. I was just standing outside waiting on somebody to come out of the bathroom. I'm like, geez. But yeah, underground Atlanta is pretty cool, and so is the Coca-Cola Museum if you've never been there. So
yeah, I have been.
Yeah.
The chairman of the board of Coca-Cola gets an automatic membership at East Lake Country Club, which was 2 blocks away from my house and where we belonged for many years. So I knew each of the chairmen of the board of Coke as they came through, and all the other big companies in Atlanta.
Wow.
Sort of grew up. One of the best things that ever happened to me, Jim Newman of Pace Seminars coined the term comfort zones. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me was being born to a mother and father who were successful and articulate and educated and so on, and where I was raised. Because I didn't know there were people who weren't successful till I was in my late teens or early 20s. I assumed everybody was.
Wow. That's incredible. See, that's what. So it's about the mindset, right? There's this huge disconnect with people that get stuck. It starts right there in the mind. So and I know you know that, but so you went through you were in East Lake down southeast Atlanta, which isn't far. It's not too far from the mountain where they do the laser light shows, the
Stone Mountain.
Stone Mountain, yeah, which is another phenomenal thing to go see. But like, so here you are down in Atlanta. You're going to school down there, right?
Yeah, I went to high school and
Okay.
prep school up in the mountains in Tennessee, but high school there and started college there, Georgia State University. I was elected president of my freshman class, but I have a complaint. I was elected because of my name. No one knew who I was, and my campaign manager suggested I not give a speech. He said, "We'll only lose votes." So I won with like 90% of the vote, running against 5 other people.
Oh my gosh.
Mainly because of my name. But my complaint is they didn't swear the new president in until 3 weeks after the election and when school had started. And by that time, I dropped out. So I was elected but never sworn in.
Hold it, you dropped out your freshman year of college?
Freshman weeks of college, yeah.
You didn't even like. You're like, this is. What happened? Why did you decide that?
I wanted to make money, not talk about Shakespeare.
Love it.
And shortly thereafter, Wednesday, September 15th, 1965, I answered a little ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, said, if you know anything about marketing plans and want to make more money, dial this number. Well, I didn't know what a marketing plan was, but I wanted to make more money. So I answered the ad from a phone booth. I'm interviewing the guy who ran the ad to find out if he's worthy of hiring me.
Wow.
And about 4 or 5 minutes into the conversation, he said, Mr. Gay, I'm not the man standing in a phone booth answering want ads. Where are you? And I told him it was on Peachtree Street. Of course, that's easy to do in Atlanta because everything is Peachtree Street.
Right.
But I was on the Peachtree Street, and he was at 1447 West Peachtree Street. And he said, okay, you're just a few blocks away. Be standing in front of my desk in, I think he gave me 15 minutes, or don't ever call this number again, and hung up. Jimmy Rucker, my running buddy, high school friend, and the greatest salesman I ever personally worked with, came around at about that time. He also worked for my father in the food broker's business. I jumped in like Batman and Robin. I said, quick, 1447 West Peachtree Street. So off we went, and with a minute or two or seconds to spare, I skidded up in front of the receptionist's desk, said, hi, I'm here for an appointment. I thought it was a one-on-one. It turned out it was a very small opportunity meeting, and where they draw the circles and so on.
I love it.
And after I introduced myself to her, I turned around. There was a nice looking guy sitting there, black curly hair. And I said, hi, my name's Ben Gay. And he went right into the standard Ben Gay jokes. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to rub it in. Et cetera, et cetera. And so after he got through with that, I'm used to that. So I let him have his little run. I said, what's your name? He said, Zig Ziglar. And I said, with a name like Zig Ziglar, you're laughing at Ben Gay? You got to be kidding me. I'd never heard of him, nor had anyone else.
This is in 1965?
Wednesday, September 15th, 1965 at noon. It had a little impact on my life.
I reckon it did.
So Zig and I and Jimmy Rucker joined the company that day, put up $91.42 each for a little sample package, and we started a run. Zig got off faster than I did because he was 18 years older and had been in selling and was already, because of church and all, a pretty good speaker.
Yeah.
I was just a goofball who wanted to make more money. But by the end of the year, we'd caught up with him and started making a good deal of money. The last few months I was in the field there, adjusted for inflation, Rucker and I were making about $400,000 a month. That's adjusted for inflation.
Wow.
Part-time, because we didn't want to give up the security of our jobs with my father. So on my birthday, where we were making $100 a week, that shows clear thinking on my part. So August 22nd, the next year, August, September, the next year, he called, that's my birthday, he called me into his office and he said, sit down, we're having a birthday party tonight, but I want to give you your present early. Is Rucker here? And I said, sure. Jimmy came in, he said, since you two are sewn together at the hip and don't do anything separate, what I want to do is give you both your birthday presents today. And he said, oh, great. Thank you, Mr. Gay. You're both fired.
Whoa.
And, we're thinking, what'd we do? Well, what he was saying is, go fly. You're making more money than I am.
Wow.
Go do it. So that freed me up. One little sales contest against Zig and several thousand other distributors. The second prize was a Rolls Royce. Zig won that. Next was a Lincoln Continental, as best I recall. Somebody else won that and on down the line. The first prize was a mystery prize. And after I won it, I discovered mystery prize was to be the next president of the company. And when I asked William Penn Patrick, the owner of the company, why it was a mystery prize, he said, in case somebody won it that I didn't like, then I'd change the prize. So I cheated somebody out of a Rolls Royce, I guess.
So it sounds like this was a network marketing company.
Yeah, Holiday Magic Cosmetics and later its related companies, Stay Power, Motor Oil Additives, Bob Cummins, Vitamins, et cetera,
Wow.
was the largest MLM direct sales company on the planet at the time, bigger than Amway and Shackley combined.
Oh my gosh!
Adjusted for inflation, I was 26-ish, running adjusted for inflation a $3.5 billion. That's with a B, billion dollar company. We were taking in those dollars $1 million a day before anybody heard of us. But because we were the biggest act in town, in the country, and soon in the world, we drew all the top talent. So when I say Zig Ziglar worked for me, he did because he was in Holiday Magic. I didn't bring him to Holiday Magic.
Wow.
Dr. Napoleon Hill was my personal mentor because William Penn Patrick paid him. Bill said that I was like the kid that you have to tie a pork chop around his neck to get the dog to play with him. He had to hire Dr. Hill to be my mentor. J. Douglas Edwards, who you and I talked about earlier today, was one of our top speakers. Og Mandino, fill in the blank, Robert Schuller, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, everybody that was anybody, because we were the big game in town. And back then, now there are 8,000 MLMs. Back then there were 3 or 4 of note: Shackley, Amway, us, and I forget who the other one was.
Oh my gosh! So
I was right place at the right time.
I'm kind of, my tongue just swelled up. I'm a little bit speechless. So my apologies if I come off sounding a little bit dumb right now. But so Zig Ziglar worked for you.
Yes,
at this company.
Because I became president.
Right.
I used to love to say that within earshot of him because it drove him crazy. I'm the president. You're a distributor. You work for me.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. So, and I have a text message from his daughter on my phone right now. So you mentioned Napoleon Hill as well.
Yes.
How did Napoleon tie into all of this?
Well, Dr. Hill named Bill Patrick in one of his books one of the 4 or 5 most influential people he'd ever met or in the world or something, along with Thomas Edison and so on.
Wow.
And so he came to the office. I didn't know he was coming. He came to the office to present the thing. We flew him out in the Learjet, first time he'd ever been in the Learjet.
Wow.
And after the presentation, was back in Bill's office. I was busy. Bill got, in the early days, the glamour. I had to make the money so he could have the glamour. 42 airplanes, 3,500 acre ranch, blah, blah, blah. So 110-foot yacht. And,
wow.
So, I guess on the way out the door, there's a knock on my door, and I said, come in. It was Bill Patrick. And standing next to him was an older gentleman on a cane. And so I thought, oh, God, it's one of Bill's old friends, and I'm going to have to build a company around him. That's how Stay Power Motor Oil Additives got started. An old friend of his had something he worked up in his garage.
Wow.
Bob Cummings, the old actor.
Yeah.
Bill had known him at NutriBio before Holiday Magic. And so he introduced me to Bob, and I said, hi, pleasure to meet you. I grew up watching you on television. Bill said as he walked away, build a company around him. So that started Bob Cummings Vitamins. So here stands this elderly gentleman, and I thought, oh, God, I'm going to have to build multi-level marketing wheelchairs or canes or something. So I walked over to him and I said, hi, I'm Ben Gay. And he said, Bill jumped in and said, this is Dr. Napoleon Hill. I said, oh, my goodness, what an honor. The day I joined Holiday Magic, I was given a old copy record of The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, and an old beat-up copy of Think and Grow Rich by Dr. Hill. I said, what an honor to meet you, Dr. Hill. And he said, call me Nappy. And I said, I'm very sorry. And that started an argument that lasted 2.5 years. The words nappy never came out of my mouth until he was dead, and I was telling stories about him.
Oh, my God.
I'm a Southern gentleman. You don't call an older gentleman who's been very successful and is a doctor of something nappy.
No.
I couldn't do it.
I couldn't either.
So anyway, Bill said, there are times when I'm convinced you're afraid to come down the hall. We were at opposite ends of a long building, and tell me your fears and maybe a failure that day or something. So I have retained, he might have said, Dr. Hill to be sort of your mentor. I'm sure you use the word mentor. I'm using today's terminology, but work with you. And here's the deal. You can tell him anything on earth. Anything. It will never get back to me. I didn't believe that, so I tested it. Well, I won't bore you with the story, but there was something that I knew would drive Bill Patrick crazy.
Yeah.
And I told Dr. Hill we were thinking about doing that, and waited for the door to come off the hinges, and nothing. Till the day Bill died in a plane crash up at the ranch, nothing.
Oh,
and I had written out the plot on a letter, sealed it, and put it in his secretary's desk. So when the explosion came, we could get out the letter and see that it was not true; it was a plot.
Wow.
And to test Dr. Hill's honesty. To my knowledge, when the company finally went out of business, Bill was dead by then by a couple of years. To my knowledge, that letter was still in that desk. So
wow.
Dr. Hill kept his word, and I told him lots of things that I would have just as soon Bill Patrick not know at that time.
Oh my gosh, that's that. Like my mind right now is seriously, it's numb. So I mean, I'm sure my good friend Jeffrey Gitomer.
Yeah, I know of him. We've appeared at seminars together,
okay.
But he's on Tuesday, I'm on Wednesday type thing.
Yeah.
I don't think, unless I wasn't paying attention when he introduced himself, I don't think we've ever met.
Oh, okay. Well, he's a good friend of mine, and I've had him on the show a couple times. He actually sent me a pre-release of a and it's normally it would be laying right here, but it's laying up next to it's on my nightstand because I'm reading it, but it's the pre-reader's version or whatever it's called of a book that he just took out of the archives, the Napoleon Hill's early writings before Think and Grow Rich, and he wrote this book it was all Napoleon Hill stuff, and oh my gosh, the guy was way beyond his time. Napoleon
he was.
Hill.
If to drop in a plug, but I think it'll help your folks, a company is being built around me and my time with Dr. Hill.
Wow.
It's called The Last Protege, and the way you find it is thelastprotege.com.
Wow.
And it's going to be probably the biggest thing I've ever done, which is not exactly what I planned at this point in my life, but it came upon me.
Wow.
So if they're interested in the teachings of Dr. Hill, my relationship with him, and more importantly, how his teachings can be applied to today. Sometimes writing from many, many years ago is a little cumbersome to read by today's people. It's not in 5-sentence paragraph or 5-word paragraphs. I think it's going to be a tremendous help to people. And at no cost, no obligation. I think if you go to that website, you just put in your name, first name, and email so you'll be kept up to date as it unfolds.
Hey, maybe my wife who's on here, she's mesmerized by you as well. If somebody could type that website address in the comments, that would be awesome. thelastprotege.com.
Right.
So that's awesome. And so let's go back to so you're still in Atlanta, is that right?
No. Oh, at that point?
At that point.
Yeah. Just a distributor with Holiday Magic. And as I said, the phone booth was a cleverly disguised rocket, and it took off.
Okay.
And rather quickly, I was rather quickly is a relative term. It seemed like forever for me, but from the day I joined to the day I was living in California and president was a little less than 2 years.
Yeah. Wow. So you said that the company, now, how long were you, like you were president of the company and you were involved in this for how long?
I was with HM for 7 years, I'm guessing.
7 years, okay.
That's close.
Okay.
Dr. Hill and I met in 1967. He died in 1970, and I was there a couple of more years after that.
Okay. And then what happened next? What happened in life then? Like you went.
Bill Patrick and I got into a battle over money, and I wasn't willing to do some things he wanted done. So the latter years of his life and the next 3 years of my life, we beat each other over the heads with our wallets and made his attorney and my attorney wealthy.
Right.
He wound up dead in a plane crash in his P-51 up at our ranch in Clear Lake, California.
Wow.
Some people said it was suicide. It wasn't. He was just reckless. When he was a level 8 pilot, he was flying at a level 10. And last time I was up at the ranch with him, it was time to come home, go back to Marin County and run the business so he could live at the ranch. And he said, I'll fly you down whenever you're ready to go. And I said, no, I've called Art Stagg, our corporate pilot. He's coming to get me. He said, we've got 4 airplanes here, and our airport is, by air 30 minutes away. I said, William, I have ridden with you for the last time in an airplane. You can only fly, it's up in hilly country, you can only fly upside down at 450 miles an hour through the mountains for so long. You're going to kill yourself up here.
Wow.
And about a year later, he did.
Oh, my God. Wow. So after the company, because you left that, or the company, what?
Lingered on for a couple of years after Bill's death and after my departure.
Okay.
But it's gone. We should be Amway. The big stadium in Orlando should be the Ben Gay Stadium.
Yeah.
But Bill Patrick would not compromise. The government wanted to make some changes in MLM. Amway compromised.
Yeah.
Even Glenn Turner, Dare to Be Great, Coscott, who used to work for us, even he compromised, which is a story unto itself.
Wow.
Glenn was an interesting character. But Bill wouldn't. So the federal government decided to drive him out of business and succeeded.
Yeah, there's a fight you don't want to pick.
No.
Ever.
It's like, never fight with anybody who buys ink by the barrel. I used to refer to newspapers. Right. Never fight with the federal government. You lose.
You lose. Yeah, there's no, it's funny. I'm in marketing and web development, and I've had some people call me over the years, hey, I'm going to file a lawsuit against the federal government and I need a website. Like, dude, no. I don't want to. I'm not building that site. No. Like, no. Are you crazy? Like, that's stupid. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you're Wells Fargo. It doesn't matter. Like, you lose.
They have more.
They have way more. And eminent domain and all that stuff. So,
yeah.
So
the government prints theirs.
What's that?
Government prints their money.
Right.
They will have more at the end than you do.
Right, exactly. So what did you do after that? Did you retire?
Well, I retired is an interesting phrase. Basically, I was fired when Bill and I came apart, although we remained personal friends, had lunch a couple times a month after that. Bill firing you, it's sort of like Donald Trump. Bill firing you didn't mean anything. You could still be buddies, you know.
Oh my
And we had
gosh.
some investments together. But basically, at age 30, I retired. And my mother said that was not a good idea. The idle hands, the devil's
Yeah.
workshop, or whatever it was. And she
Yeah.
was probably right. I started a church, Hilltop House Church, made myself archbishop. My theory being churches, I didn't care about their sanctuaries being tax exempt, but I did care about Yankee Stadium being tax exempt and big parking garages and so on. I didn't think that was right. So my theory was start a church and then break those ethical rules, not the legal rules, but, you know,
Right.
start
Right.
traveling around the countryside to places I was going to go anywhere and charging it to the church because I was doing research or something. And I ordained at $12 a head over 40,000 ministers. And then I'm telling you, this is a funny story. I'm not terribly serious about it.
Yeah.
But I came home one day and my secretary of many years, my executive assistant, Marty Connolly, she greeted me in the hallway and handed me a local newspaper, Marin County's local newspaper, with a ribbon around it. That was never a good sign. So I opened it up, and on the front page was a beautiful head and shoulders shot of me, my publicity photograph, and next to it, I couldn't figure out why. I thought, well, I'll read that story later, was a beautiful black Labrador retriever, head and shoulders. As I read down, it turned out maybe our qualification credential committee wasn't doing its job. We had ordained Sadie Thurber, the black lab, who happened to belong to the owner, the president of the San Francisco Better Business Bureau.
Oh no.
So while I was sort of flying under the radar, getting ready to make my mark on what a church should and shouldn't do, Sadie Thurber sped up that train, and we were on national news rather quickly. I can always tell when I was on national news, the phone would ring and it'd be my mother.
Oh.
Dad never called. He was never shocked by anything, but Mother would call and said, Archbishop. And I thought, uh-oh.
Oh, no.
I understand. I saw on ABC's Wide World of whatever tonight that you ordained a dog. Is that right?
No. Oh.
So there was that. And then I went, you talk about breakthrough walls. There was that. And while all that was going on, the money wasn't coming in. $50,000-$60,000 a month was going to my attorney. The money ran out. Bill stopped buying the stock back from me that he had promised to. I was making $15,000-$20,000 a month sitting at home just with him buying stock back on a regular basis. That stopped. And we wound up losing one of the largest, most beautiful homes in Marin County. The cars were towed away. And the guy from whom I had bought and or leased some 300 cars, Marin Bay, Lincoln, Mercury, they're out of business now, lent me for 30 days a Mercury Bobcat to get out of town. And I drove into this town with a nickel in my pocket in 1976 in a borrowed car.
Wow.
And had to start over. So we started the 800 call center industry with a national communication center, the very first one in the world, and built not only a new company, but a whole new industry.
Wow. A call center.
Yeah, the first dial 800 to buy something call center in the world was right here in this town.
You've got to be kidding me. Wow.
No. And in 1976, 95% of all Americans didn't know a toll-free number was toll-free to them when they used to expensive long-distance calls. So when they'd call, they'd yell because it was long distance and talk really fast because they didn't want to run up their tab. So it was interesting times. It was
we had those party lines back then too.
Oh, sure.
I remember those.
When I moved up here, they had not only party lines, some houses couldn't get a party line, so you'd drive down the street in a suburb and you'd see a phone line coming out of somebody's bedroom window over to another bedroom window. They were unofficially sharing their phone.
Wow, that's insane. So oh my gosh, man, you're like you're a pioneer of like everything, it seems like, and when it comes to like, I mean, because I've had telemarketing phone rooms where and we did outbound stuff. It sounds like you guys did mainly inbound stuff
In the beginning, but then outbound.
Okay,
Sure.
yeah. So and those are interesting environments.
They certainly are.
They are. I've seen telemarketers start crying, so that went well.
We built the largest one of course, in the beginning, it was easy to be the largest one in the world because we were the only one in the world.
Right.
But after we got competition, we remained the largest in the world. We were taking, I'm quoting from memory, but 60,000 incoming calls a day.
Oh my gosh.
And I still have that number, 800-824-7888. Still, if you dial it, it goes to my cell phone now, although it hasn't been part of a business for 30 some odd years.
You're going to get like 300 cell phone calls today.
Yeah, swell.
That's funny. So that went well, and you just kept growing from there.
Well, it went well, except we opened a marketing division, and I'm telling you all this because Breakthrough Walls sounds like maybe it might fit your theme a little better.
Yeah.
People say, "Oh, what was it like to know Dr. Napoleon Hill?" He was happy to have the work.
Yeah.
He was in one of his many lulls in life.
Yeah.
Earl Nightingale was the voice of all of our companies, and Earl and Dr. Hill were at my house one day. Earl Nightingale and Dr. Hill went to my house one day, and I talked about getting a copy of the record the day I joined Holiday Magic and a copy of the book. And one of them said, "Well, did it work?" And I said, "Well, I guess you're sitting in my house and you both work for me. So I guess it did work."
Oh my gosh.
I've listened to The Strangest Secret thousands of times over the years. It's still my favorite all-time recording, and Dr. Hill's. But anyway, we opened up a marketing arm, National Toll-Free Marketing. We're sitting there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week anyway for our clients.
Yeah.
So why don't we put in something? So in came the outbound, serious outbound. We did some for our own business, selling cosmetics and vitamins and this and that and so on.
Yeah.
And the federal government decided we were a multi-level marketing company, which we weren't. I'd gone out of my way to make sure we weren't. I had written the California law, Penal Code 329. I knew what a MLM company was. We weren't, but they said we were, which takes us back to if the federal government decides. Well, they decided we were, so we were. They raided our office one day. Year or two went by. I picked up the paper one day to go get a haircut on a Saturday morning. It said Placerville man indicted, and I thought, I wonder who that poor guy is. And I went to read the story. That poor guy was me, and many of my associates. And so went through a year-long trial. Now, I knew all I had to do. I'm one of the greatest salesmen that ever lived. All I had to do was get one juror, and I'm off. And year-long trial, longest trial in the history of the 9th District, which is most of the West Coast.
Oh, my God.
And at the end of it, they found me, surprise, guilty.
Oh, my God.
And the judge, who was not happy about having his courtroom tied up for a year, got his vengeance by sentencing me. Everybody else got lighter stuff. They probably didn't consider it light, but it was light.
Yeah.
Sentenced me to a $500,000 fine and 15 years in federal prison.
Oh, my God.
That was sort of my reaction. If today they say 15 years to you, you will do 85% of the 15 years. Back then it was called old law, which meant when you hear 15, you'll do a minimum of 5, a maximum of 15.
Oh, my God.
If you stab a guard, either of those numbers could change. I wound up doing 6 years, 1 month, 1 day, and 2 hours.
Did you say if you stab a guard?
Well, and my point is, it's, if you come in, sit down, read a book for 5 years, you'll go home at the end of 5 years.
Right. Yeah.
And they can't keep you longer than 10 on a 15 sentence. In my case, it was 6 years, 1 month, 1 day, and 2 hours. And the reason it was longer than the minimum 5, here's a little warning to your people. I'm very good at what I do. I wound up running their education department, teaching sales and marketing, teaching public speaking, running their regional warehouse. I had my own van. I drove my own crew around. I could have left any time I wanted. And I was so valuable, I found out later later from some correctional officer friends of mine. They said, Ben, you painted yourself in a corner. The reason you didn't go home at 5 years is there were people here who didn't want you to go at all. They were afraid they couldn't run some of the things you were running.
Oh my gosh.
Without you. So if you ever have to go to federal prison, be a screw up.
But
don't stab a guard.
But don't stab a guard.
Yeah,
I was going to say.
But be a screw up.
Oh my gosh, man. Wow.
What we're doing today, the closers in my seminars, I've been doing it in one form or another ever since September 15th, 1965. But what I've done in the last 22 years has all been since that event. I got out 22 years ago. And so the closers and all that stuff is since then.
Wow. Okay. So what year did you get out of the
96. Went in 90, got out in 96.
96. So in 96 you get out of all that and you, which I can't even fathom that. I can't fathom it. But like you get out of that and then what? Like were you still like did you still have your business, or was it like, oh, start over again?
Well, it was start over again in that when I went in my current business selling books and seminars and all was making 40, 50,000 a month.
Okay.
When I came out, it was making profit. When I came out in 96, it wasn't making any profit and was $50,000 in debt.
Oh, wow.
So some well-meaning friends had at least kept the P.O. box open and the 800 number that we were using by then on. Wow. So I had a base, and most of my clients thought that I was just so busy I couldn't speak at their conventions and so on. And sometimes I'd return their calls either from my office. I had a phone and a computer. It's not exactly like the normal prisoner has.
Right.
Or out in the payphones where I'd started anyway. I started in a phone booth. Might as well phone home from prison in a phone booth. I would be out there talking, and people are yelling and screaming and carrying on, and the intercom is cutting on and off. Yeah. So I always told them I was in an airport. Pardon the background noise. I'm in an airport. And wow. Then in 1996, suddenly I was available again, and boom, we started saying yes to speeches and seminars instead of no, and most people never knew I was gone. Tell you a quick story. I know we're pressed for time. A quick story. Gigi, who I was not married to when I went in, I courted her by letter and phone call. I'd known her for years, but casually. But that's when I started my campaign. If you think I'm a good letter writer, try and get a classy lady to even open your mail from prison, never mind entertain the idea. So anyway, I come home, been gone 6 years plus, and she said, first night, what are we going to do? I said, well, why don't we go to our favorite restaurant? There's a restaurant I'd taken her to when I was married to my previous wife. They called the Snooty Frog. So we walk into the Snooty Frog, and she's concerned, do we hang our head down because now you're an ex-con and so on. And she said, what do we do? I said, well, we walk in, we ask for a table, and we sit down. Walked in. The owner of the restaurant, Chanel, came up to me and she said, Mr. Gay, how are you? You haven't been in here in a couple of months. We thought we'd offended you. Your regular table is ready. We sat down. She brought the wine she knew I preferred and so on, and then said, if we did something wrong, you let us know. We were noticeably aware that you were gone for a couple of months. And I looked at Gigi and winked. People get on with their own lives.
That's right.
Yeah. She didn't know I was in prison, didn't care if I was in prison, and knew I was a pretty nice guy and a good tipper. So
they spent 6 years, 1 month, 1 day, and 2 hours holding that table.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people were mad.
Oh my God, that is funny. Wow. So you came out and so your career has been, and listen, you mentioned time. This is the internet, man. We can go all day if you want. So
up to you.
I try to keep it around an hour, but if we go longer, like I am completely mesmerized by your story, and I know there's a lot of people listening and watching that are too. So, so you came out and you came out of prison. You still had the business PO box, the 800 number, and just boom, you just start. I'm going to start doing the speeches now. I'm going to go talk and train and teach people.
Just went back to what I've always done.
Wow.
Since in Holiday Magic, a month or so in, I'd had a few little victories, and it became evident that I was maybe a little more personable than your average person. Zig was up in Columbia, South Carolina. I didn't have to contend with him every few minutes,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't have gotten as much stage time. But Bill Dempsey, the guy who recruited us, the three of us that day, said to me one Saturday, "Why don't you get up and tell him what you've been doing?" So I got up, scared to death, probably talked for 5 or 6 minutes, and then got a little applause. And I thought, oh, I sort of like that. So I got up a little longer, a little longer, a little longer. Here's how I got in paid public speaking. We did a Saturday meeting. It was, I'm guessing, better part of 8 hours, including lunch. And I worked for most of that time, 6 or 7 of the hours. Zig came in about halfway through my presentation. I didn't even know he was in town. He got up and did an hour of biscuits, fleas, and pump handles and, this good old boy back home stuff. Mm-hmm. It was great, and I enjoyed it. I knew Zig's stories better than he did. But I used to correct him, mouth corrections when he was talking, which he didn't appreciate. But, when you have an old rock and roll song when you're growing up, you don't want their new rendition of it because they're tired of singing it. You want it
right.
So I was sort of tight with Zig about don't screw with the stories.
Yeah, right.
So Zig gets up. He works for about an hour. Work is a relative term, but he talked for about an hour. Mm-hmm. And at the end, I'm shaking hands up in front of the room, and I look in the back, and Zig is talking to Bill Dempsey, the guy who recruited us. Dempsey reaches into his pocket, pulls out an envelope, hands it to Zig, who puts it in his coat pocket. And I thought, that's interesting. I just sort of intuitively thought money might have changed hands, but it wouldn't have been a commission. Those came in the mail from San Rafael, California. We didn't swap money at a local level. Right. So when they finished talking, I excused myself, chased Zig down through the meeting room and out into the hall. There was a coffee shop at the end of the hall. And I said, Zig, I didn't get to spend any time with you. Let me buy you a cup of coffee. And he said, well, that'd be nice. So we went in, bought him a cup of coffee. And I said, just to keep Dempsey honest, how much did he pay you? And Zig, thank God he paid him something, or else I would have looked like an idiot. It might have been a letter to his wife or something. I don't know.
Right.
Zig opens up the envelope and looks at it and he said, $300. He said, what did he pay you? And I said, the same, $300. Well, he hadn't paid me anything. I didn't know you could get paid for speaking.
Oh, my gosh.
But I had, except for prisons and churches and, charity work for friends of mine, I had just given my last free speech. Once I discovered you could get paid for it, I started getting paid.
Wow.
And that was 5,000 plus paid speeches ago. So I will always be grateful to Zig and Bill Dempsey and Zig. They're both gone now, but they changed my life when I saw that envelope change hands.
Wow. Did you just say 5,000 paid speaking engagements?
Plus, those are things, you don't count the first when you're deep into your career before you sort of look back and try and figure it out. But based on the pace, I gave 300 seminars a year for several years.
Oh, my gosh.
In fact, I was giving close to that, a couple of hundred, when I went into prison. And the deal I struck when I asked Gigi to marry me, she said, well, I'd like to marry you, and I'm in love with you, and I'm flattered you asked. However, we need to talk. And I remember thinking, that's not good. I heard something similar to that at the end of my first marriage and my second marriage. And she grew up with one of my previous wives, and when we moved here, became a very good friend of my first wife.
Wow.
So she knew the stories. Yeah. And so we sat down over a glass of wine, and she explained to me that 300 seminars a year were not good for a marriage, and probably that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah.
And I had no desire to meet my fourth wife, so I'm sure she's out there somewhere, but I didn't want to meet her. So I agree, a little conversation back and forth. I agreed to 24 a year, raise my fees so I could have take some of that hit, but 24 a year, no more than 3 in any 1 month. Next proviso was no local clients. She had heard about distributors coming up to, we ran 5 major MLMs in our home in Marin County.
Wow.
You couldn't go out the front door without bumping into somebody from one of the companies and so on. So you always had to be dressed and so on. She said no local clients. Well, I looked up and down Main Street in Placerville, California, and decided that wasn't a great loss. The hardware store, I think, had 12 employees. So I acted like that was a killer, but I reluctantly agreed. And the last one was no speeches within 50 miles of home. And I thought, because a lot of companies fly their people in, have conventions up at Lake Tahoe, and I go speak to them. I said, how far away is Lake Tahoe? And she said, well, where the resorts are, that's 60 miles. I said, okay, deal. So I went to 24 seminars, no local clients, and no speeches within 50 miles of home. And I'm telling you, it was the best thing, Ken, I have ever agreed to.
Wow.
Placerville is a little haven. Gigi's family's been here for 100 years. So here I'm not Ben Gay.
Yeah.
I'm Gigi Ronzoni's husband, and we don't know what he does.
Oh, my gosh.
So I just absolutely love it.
Wow. That's
I did a
awesome.
seminar in Portland when I first got out of prison, flew up or drove up or something to Portland. We were driving back, and I was still sort of inflated. I'd been out of prison 11 days when I did that seminar.
Oh, my God. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and this is before TSA, so when we got off the plane, there were a couple of hundred people in the jetway holding up signs, welcome me to Portland and to that company.
That's
I turned to Gigi and I said, welcome to my world.
Wow.
And she'd never seen that before, that part of my life. So we drive back down the coast. We get home, and as we pull into the driveway, it was Wednesday, she said, don't forget to take out the trash tonight. And I looked at her. This is Mr. Gay, who was just cheered, like.
Yeah, right.
And she said, don't forget to take out the trash. And I shot her a look, and she said, welcome to my world.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my gosh. That is too much. So let me ask you a question. I mean, look, I already knew some of that through email exchange with you, that you'd been through a lot of ups and downs. And, I guess for the audience, for the person that's watching that is stuck, what do you think the biggest thing is outside of salespeople? Because we have more than salespeople on here, right? Although I think that if you're breathing, you're in sales.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what do you think it is that keeps people stuck in a bad place in their life?
Inertia, things that in motion tend to remain in motion unless acted upon by an outside force. Things at rest tend to remain at rest till acted upon by an outside force. So you can't wait for a zig, or somebody used to say, people say, I hope somebody comes by and turns me on. And whoever it was that said it said, what if nobody shows up? Which is distinctly possible because they're busy running their own lives.
Right.
So get around successful people. I just did a seminar in Chicago, and one of the speakers said that he was he knew he needed motivation. He knew he needed this and that and so on, but he didn't have any money. And so he used to go to Amway meetings, not as a distributor. He said he never bought the product.
Right.
Never joined the marketing plan. He had his own plans, just to be around people who were going, yay, and slapping hands and excited and so on. He said, I went to a one Amway meeting a week for a couple of years, and it got me up and running and thinking differently. Read the good books, go to the seminars, watch the videos. More training is available today on the internet for free than I got in my first 5 years in the business. Yeah. Sit down and go to the right places. Don't look at the cats playing with a parakeet. Watch your shows, and watch all the other stuff that's online. Yeah. done several of these, and most of them, much to my surprise, are up on YouTube or whatever. So if you haven't had enough of Ben Gay today, you can get even more. And your stuff I know is up. So start availing yourself of that. Then, if you've ever had success in your life, go back to that. Back to basics. There was a reason you were successful. It wasn't a lightning bolt out of the sky. You got up in the morning, you did certain things.
Right.
In the car business, always saying, I'm in a slump. What do I do? Was there ever a time when you weren't in a slump? Oh, well, yeah. Well, do that.
Right.
Yeah, do that again.
Right.
Excuse me. And if you haven't had that experience, Jim Rohn, I think it was, said success leaves clues.
Yeah.
Get around successful people. And they're amazingly, I'm the biggest sucker in the world for somebody pulling up a chair and saying, can I talk to you for just a minute? The one I don't like, because it means there's no intent to ever pay you, is, may I pick your brain?
I love that one.
Yeah, but I still fall for it.
Yeah.
Because I remember when other people let me pick their brain. Had I not answered that little ad in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Ken, understand you and I would not be talking.
I know. It's
amazing.
Pool. Yeah, it's amazing. I think that, if you were to have somebody, I mean, you would tell them the same thing. If somebody came to you right now and said, man, my electric's getting shut off tomorrow, got my car repoed last week, this happened, and I just can't figure it out. I'm lost. I don't know what to do. What do you say, like, in that moment? Because I've been there where, you said you had a nickel. I've been there where I didn't have a nickel. I
had a leg up on you then.
Yeah, you were rich. So, but I've been, and it's like you get to that place where it's like, I don't know what to do. I really truly don't know what to do. You become paralyzed in the fear or the whatever. What do you say to push them out of that?
Well, even though it isn't as blunt and direct as perhaps it should have been, I would say to them what I just said moments ago. It's inertia. You have to take action.
Yeah.
When I started the National Communications Center, people knew up here that I had a bunch of money. I'd been here doing sales training in my big Cadillac with the staff and so on. So they knew I was successful. Yeah. They didn't know I'd become unsuccessful. So when I moved up here and I said, I haven't moved my bank stuff around or anything yet, but I still need an office and I still need a house. They said, not a problem. And they leased me an office. No money changed hands for several months.
Wow.
No money changed hands on the house. So I went back to being the successful Ben Gay. I started taking action. What I started to say about the call center business. When I started the National Communications Center, I had an idea. Speakers like me were on the road. They couldn't stay in touch. Their secretary wasn't sitting at the desk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year.
Right.
So wouldn't it be nice to have someone answer your phone live, take messages for you, and we had an itinerary service. Tell us where you are, the phone number, we'll write that down. And in those days, we literally wrote it down.
Wow.
And we will tell them where you are and the phone number, or take messages. That was the entire concept of the National Communications Center. When I left it 10 years later, that was less than 0.5% of the business. I was totally wrong. Most speakers weren't busy enough to need anything like that.
Yeah.
There are speakers and then there are speakers.
Yeah, right.
Most speakers are small S speakers.
Right.
So they didn't need it and couldn't afford it. Two, it was unlimited calls because we had unlimited time. It was $10,000 a line to put the phones in, which got you 240 hours at the beginning of the next month. You got another bill for $10,000 plus overtime if there was any from the month before.
Wow.
Rather quickly, I was entertaining $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month phone bills. But that bought us a lot of time, so a thing slipped past me. A guy signed up for the service. He said all he's really interested in was the message service. We didn't have a message service, but that meant he would just use part of what he bought.
Right.
And then he started running ads. It was the old Sharper Image, Richard Tallheimer.
Oh my gosh.
Who's now a buddy of mine. Well, he's paying, I'm making up numbers, $70 a month for an executive service, but he's getting 10,000 phone calls that we're having to write down and mail to him in those days, or fax to him, however we got them to him.
Yeah.
And somebody said to me, is this what you had in mind? What if everybody did that? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So we started the ad response division where we got paid by the phone call. So now you want to have 50,000 calls a month, have at it, but you'll pay 70,000 a month to get them, and they were happy to do it. They didn't want to set up a call center. And then a guy in our own office building came down and knocked on the door one day. Pardon me. I guess I shouldn't turn my head and cough into a microphone.
It's fine.
Guy knocks on the door, and the doors were all locked. It was a locked, bonded secure facility.
Wow.
The reason was I didn't want people to open the door and see me and three little ladies sitting around a card table, which is how I started.
Wow.
With a dead plant in the corner. I don't know why, but we had a dead plant. So he knocks on the door. He said, I've read your stuff. Can I just get a message service? I don't want the locator and all that. And I said, no. Are you running ads? He said, no, I just want a message service. I said, I'm really sorry. We don't do that. As I shut the door, one of my older ladies who had been in answering service work, Virginia Helm, said, Ben, why don't we have a message service? And I said, well, because we don't have one. She said, that wasn't the question. Why don't we have a message? Right. So I chased the guy up the steps into his office. I said, we have a message service, $50 a month. I just made up a number, 50 a month. First and last in advance. He wrote me a check for 100, and we were in the message service business.
Oh, my God.
Ad response was, I'm guessing, 80% of our business. Message was almost 20. And my idea was less than 0.5% of the business after it got up and rolling. What saved me? We took action. We got into the business.
Right.
If you told me that my idea wasn't going to work, I'd have shut it down and figured out some other place to move.
Yeah.
So we took action. I was the attitude coach for Apollo 15, 16, 17. And, I learned I didn't do anything technical. It was just attitude and motivation and some ideas. But they taught me a great lesson. I'm making up numbers. I had long since forgot them, but when the Apollo program it was a Saturn V rocket. And it took X number of millions of pounds of pressure to get it off the ground.
Yep.
It would take, 15 seconds or more to clear the tower. You sit there, just go, come on, go.
Yeah, right.
But once it got in the air, in space, in theory, it's traveling 17,500 miles an hour. You could have opened the hatch, braced your wrist, had a can of hairspray in your hand, and gone and changed the direction of the capsule. However, slightly, but you'd change it. That little part, because it was off the pad and running.
Right.
Get off the pad. If you want to make a lot of money, I'd start out in selling. Personally, I'm not a brain surgeon, so my options are limited. I'd get a sales job. Get a sales job. And, people say, well, who's hiring? If they think you can close, every company in the world is hiring. Yeah, there's no exceptions. I've never turned a good salesman away from any company I've ever run. If I thought you could sell, we would make room if we had to go buy a new desk.
That's why I don't I can't relate to people. I've never had a resume ever in my life, and I never will. Because I've never looked for a job. I've always been the top, great closer, great salesperson, communicator, and so if I wanted to work for a company, I just went and saw him and said, "Hey, where's my desk? What are you talking about?
I'm here.
I'm here. You've been waiting on me for a while. I know. I'm here, right?" But
Absolutely.
so a couple things though that we some common very first my first dive into sales was at 17 years old. I sold water purification systems for an Amway distributor.
Okay.
Like I sat, he had this little office, and I remember the presentation and everything. And the other thing is, my very first professional sales job as an adult, after I quit at the Honda factory, was working for a company called Metagram America. And Metagram America was a 24-hour-a-day answering service.
Whoa, all right.
And we had it was before, cell phones were just around the corner, but we had an alphanumeric pager, brand new to America, and it was the only other option was a beeper that would go off, and you had to find a payphone. Remember those days? So
Yeah,
we had this alphanumeric pager where we would answer your phones 24 hours a day and send you a 160-character message saying, hey, Ben Gay called for you, and you need to call him at this number. And so it was just a little more, and that was and I was the number one sales guy in that company. Didn't know anything about sales either. But within 6 months, I was one of the leaders out of like 80 people in the office. It was insane. So, and young, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I just knew I hated building cars in a factory. Right? And
you knew what you didn't like.
Yeah, I wasn't doing that anymore. So, but anyway, I agree with what you said, Ben. You're man, you are, I could talk to you all day long, seriously. Like, you're so, I don't even know what the word is, experienced and
handsome.
Yeah, and that too. I mean,
silver hair.
Yeah, right. So you have all this tremendous experience, and you've had some amazing mentors. And I is there anything else that you would like to share with everybody, like to help people get out of the muck and get into life?
For me, I would have gotten serious sooner. I treated it, I've always had a pretty good personality. I was voted wittiest in high school, which means you're a C student at best, but I was funny.
Yeah, right. Right.
So I, like Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman, I sort of thought when I went into selling a handshake, shine shoes, and a smile would be enough. I rather quickly discovered it wasn't,
no.
But it took a while to take action on it not being the answer. So I would if I had it to do over again, I would get serious sooner, much sooner. The other thing I would do is I lucked out. I answered a little ad. I walked into a phone booth. For some of your people who don't know what a phone booth is, it was an aluminum box. Yeah. Superman used to change his clothes.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Remove that, and that got me around a bunch of positive people. But that was accidental. Don't leave it to chance. They may not show up.
Right.
Get around successful people. Get around positive people, and learned how to communicate. When I I hadn't moved to California. I came out for some training before I became president with a bunch of us. Zig Ziglar was in that class.
Yeah.
Of potential instructors we were going to be. We were supposed to learn a 47-minute script, word for word, the opportunity meeting. And I was sort of, I'll wing it. What are they going to know as long as it's thought for thought? Well, it turned out they meant word for word.
Yeah.
So we're down a hallway in an office that was under construction. Bill Dempsey and I were sort of learning partners, and I forgot my manual. So I went back down the hall through a little office into the training room, and there was William Penpatrick and Fred Pape. He was the current president of the company, not knowing I was about to replace him. And they had a Betamax recorder. People don't know what that is, but it's reel-to-reel videotape, and it came in a cabinet, and they had flipped up the screen, so they're watching the people who presented that morning in the training class. When I walked in, by coincidence, they were watching me. I came in behind them. Neither one knew I was there. And Fred Pape said, "Wow, he's good." And William Penpatrick said, Bill is what I called him, but people know him as William Penpatrick. Bill Patrick said, "Ed, I'll pay more for the ability to communicate effectively than any other skill." So I did the moonwalk back out of the office.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't know I'd overheard that. I went down to the office we were in, and Dempsey said, well, what's up? I said, well, the office was tied up. I couldn't get my manual. But let's get serious about learning this.
Wow.
And that's literally when my career took a turn. I probably would have done fine anyway. But when I decided to be the best presenter in the company, that was the turn. So if you're sitting at home, stuck, maybe a little shy, maybe afraid to communicate, or you're not comfortable, join Toastmasters. Toastmasters, I have many things good and bad I can say about Toastmasters. Blind leading the blind is one of them. But they have a structure that comes from the office. And so there is a way to get comfortable. You're not going to be great there. I can always tell a Toastmasters graduate because they talk like this and they do this and they move their hand. They look like Arthur Murray dance instructors, but who all dance identical,
Right.
But it's a great starting point.
Right.
When I was at Lompoc, I also did it at San Quentin. San Quentin, I was a volunteer. I taught my People Builders program there for 5 years, how to get out of prison and stay out of prison. But apparently I wasn't listening because shortly thereafter I was in prison with some of my graduates from San Quentin. But my key to getting people to be successful was teaching them public speaking, getting them up in front of people so they didn't many of the people I worked with, their only method of communication was a gun. Give me your money.
Yeah, right.
They didn't talk. Let me give you a quick example if I can get this up where you can see it.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. It's a book called Don't Let Your Past Hold You Back, The Redemption of a Gangsta.
Wow.
No, you said gangsta.
Is it gangsta?
Gangsta.
Gangsta.
By M. Lamont Bowens. When I met Lamont, he came to one of my public speaking classes at Lompoc. His plan was to get out of prison, raise $300 or $400, get out of prison, stick up somebody to get $300 or $400 to finance his way back into the drug business. That was his plan.
Oh my God.
Lamont, when I taught him how to use his magnificent voice and natural talents, Lamont became and is now a successful attorney.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
He was a high school dropout, drug dealer, gang member, 18 years old when I met him, barely old enough to be in federal prison. It was sort of lucky he was there. And now a successful attorney. The difference, I got him comfortable in front of groups talking. And once he got that reinforcement, all the other doors opened up. Wow. Public speaking is the only reason Lamont Bowens is an attorney today.
That is absolutely amazing. And you know what? I mean, I know you've touched the lives of and positively impacted the lives of millions and millions of people. It's got to be like, I don't even know, tens of millions. But like, you positively impacted my life today, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I really am. And there's if you get a chance to go back and look at the comments on Facebook, there's some amazing comments. So, Ben, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I genuinely appreciate. I'd love to have you come back on the show sometime.
You name a time, I'll be here.
I really think you genuinely mean that, and I'm blown away by it. So thank you. I'm going to get your books. Hopefully the next time you're on, I will have at least read one. I have stacks. I have authors, and I'm very grateful for it. My buddy, I don't know if you know Weldon Long. Do you know Weldon?
I know of him.
He was on the show recently. I have authors send me their books, so I have stacks of books to read.
I'm surrounded by them also.
I know.
I can't read them all, but I have 5 books going at any given time. I have 5 reading spots.
I know.
And if you're at the top of the stack in one of those 5 reading spots, you're being read.
Yeah. It's something. So listen, thank you so much. I really mean that. Thank you for being on. You're a man of. I wish I could download your brain somehow. Like just download everything. Like
There's some dark stuff in there.
oh, well, hey, we all have the angel and the devil, right? Like, so. But thank you so much for being on. It was such a pleasure having you on. People on the stream are just blown away by you too. So, Ben, thank you so much.
Bless you. I appreciate it, Ken.
Thank
Talk to
you.
you soon.
All right. And don't hang up on Skype yet. So thank you to everybody on Facebook, by the way, for sharing this, all of your amazing comments, the hearts, the love, everything. So thank you all, and we will see you again soon. Thank you, Ben.